brief here. October 22nd, 2019. You got Johnny and George with me. Should be a good one. I guess we'll go right into it here. Just I'll share my screen. We're always new information comes out in these briefs. I'm always kind of mind blown. But we had like kind of a whole show's worth of stuff that we were talking about just before we went live. But just kind of continuing what we were discussing. I have this quote here on my screen. This is what I want to lead us off with. I found a quotation from the book, The Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country, published in 1987 by William Grider, on page 54. But the author, William Grider, quotes a Richard Siren, who is the former vice president of the Boston Federal Reserve Bank, trained at Jesuit Boston College. As you can see here, this Richard Siren was a special assistant to Paul Volcker. While Paul Volcker was the Fed chairman, and Paul Volcker, if people don't know, recently got an honorary degree from Jesuit Georgetown University. Paul Volcker is Jewish. But Richard Siren here likens the Federal Reserve System to the Catholic Church. And this is a very just an interesting quote if people haven't seen this. Again, this comes from the book Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country. Richard Siren says here, the system is just like the church. That's probably why I feel so comfortable with it. It's got a pope, that being the chairman, and a college of cardinals, the governors and bank presidents, and a curia, the senior staff. The equivalent of the laity is the commercial banks. If you're a naughty parishioner in the Catholic Church, you come to confession. In this system, the Federal Reserve System, if you're naughty, you come to the discount window for a loan. We even have different orders of religious thought, like Jesuits and Franciscans and Dominicans, only we call them pragmatists and monetarists and neo-Keynesians. And that comes from Secrets of the Temple, How the Federal Reserve Runs the Country by William Grider. And just right here, and just the Chief Justice who signed off on the Federal Reserve Act was a devout Catholic, like triple Jesuit trained Edward Douglas White. Went to Jesuit high school, Jesuit Georgetown, and was a member of the Philademic Society while at Jesuit Georgetown. But you see here, I found an article here. He likes to go by Richard F. Siren, but Richard F. Siren is the individual Jesuit trained at Boston College who the quote I just read comes from, and he's currently still on the board of trustees at Jesuit Boston College. He was the former CEO and chairman of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac. But there's a 2005 article here from the Boston, I'll link this in the chat, from the Boston Globe. But here's this Richard F. Siren speaking here at the Chief Executives Club at Jesuit Boston College. If people aren't aware of this, organization, the Chief Executives Club at Jesuit Boston College, I recommend you check it out. Like, check out who's on the board of governors at the Chief Executives Club. Like, you'll see Robert Kraft, the Jewish owner of the New England Patriots, Thomas Kennedy, the CEO, chairman of Raytheon, and Jeffrey Immelt, the former CEO, chairman of General Electric, are all on the board of directors of the Chief Executives Club at Jesuit Boston College. Interestingly, also the managing editor of the Boston Globe, Linda Henry, is also on the board at the CEOs Club at Jesuit Boston College. And if you just go to their website, you'll see that all the CEOs, literally of the world's biggest corporations, all speak here. But this is the guy this guy actually compared the Federal Reserve to the Catholic Church. And here's the block of text.
Well, it's no surprise, given that the Catholic Church was part and parcel to the sinking of the Titanic, which made the Federal Reserve possible.
Yeah, it all lines up. And actually, there was a Jesuit on I know this was in Bill Hughes's book. There was a Jesuit who actually boarded the Titanic, got on the Titanic, and then got off.
Brown. Brown.
Father Brown?
Yes.
What was his first name?
I believe Francis. I beg your pardon. Of course, Francis.
Francis, yeah, he was a Jesuit. Yeah, so there's the Jesuit Francis Brown, S.J., who boarded the Titanic and then hopped off of it. Coincidentally before it crashed.
He was instructed to catalog with photographs everyone that he could, all the passengers, so that when they murdered them, they would have a conclusive list. That ringing a bell? I'm pretty sure that was the case.
Well,
No,
yes,
it makes sense, and I know just and the reason for doing this because there were certain individuals on that boat, high-profile individuals like John Jacob Astor, for instance, who were opposed to the Federal Reserve Act being implemented in 1913. That was the argument in Bill Hughes's book. There are certain powerful individuals on the boat who didn't want the Federal Reserve Act to pass. Like it's pretty like I mentioned, like it shows the hand of the Jesuits that the Chief Justice at the time the Federal Reserve Act was signed, Edward Douglas White, had the 2 Jesuit degrees and was just like a devout Catholic. There's a statue of Edward Douglas White at the Capitol building representing Louisiana.
If I may chime in, Eric and Johnny, there are at least three prominent figures on the Titanic. The aforementioned there's Benjamin Guggenheim, Isidor Straus, and drawing the blank as to who the third one was.
That being Astor, John Jacob
Astor. Yes, Astor. Now, in the 1980s, I believe National Geographic did a documentary which aired on public broadcasting system here in America with Martin Sheen as the narrator. And he actually talked about Father Brown in this night. It was a 1984 documentary, and they showed some of his photographs. One of the subjects was the captain of the ship, Edward Smith. And I believe you can still catch this video for free on YouTube. Just type in, National Geographic Titanic documentary. And of course, Martin Sheen would be eminently qualified to do the documentary because, after all, he is, I believe, Opus Dei, devout Roman Catholic, and went to Xavier University.
Yeah, another hyper devout leftist. Not quite sure how that works, but in Roman Catholicism, I guess that's why I call it the Opus Dei effect, where you can mortify the flesh, like in Da Vinci Code. What they show you, you can, rape a child on Sunday and then spend the rest of the week with barbed wire around your nuts and saying 666 Hail Marys, and you're good to go. So, by the way, that's confirmed. Frank Brown, whatever you want to call him, was he has a photographic album. I'm sure the individual pictures of the passengers were taken out of the photographic album, and it's just a bunch of pictures of the ship to blow smoke and propaganda about, hey, he was just a photographer. No, that was his assignment. His assignment was to catalog the victims before they died so that they knew for sure who they got.
Well, I mentioned this before, and I've not found confirmation of this. I was listening to a Mae Brussels broadcast, a couple months ago, and she was talking about some famous plane crashes in the U.S. in the late 1970s and 1980s, Chicago, San Diego, places like that. And for several of these, there was a Catholic priest who showed up on the scene almost instantaneously. As a matter of fact, it was as if he knew the crash was going to take place beforehand. And he was there to give general absolution to the victims. Nobody knew what type of priest he was, where he's from, or even his name. But there are several eyewitness accounts that he showed up there before, the EMTs or the firemen showed up. And he disappeared just as quickly as he had shown up. Now, as I said, this was on a Mae Brussels broadcast. So that reminded me somewhat.
They also had one at the Pentagram on 9/11.
Yeah, I was actually, John, I was just going to say that. That's Father Stephen McGraw. I'll link his page. Yeah, I think this was he's now the president of Christendom College. He put on his info page at Christendom College that immediately at the Pentagon he was there at the scene and he started preaching at the scene of the crime along the lines like that. I'll find that and put that in the chat.
I've heard people, it's probably somebody like Phelps. You say he's lost his channel. I heard people say that Smith, the captain, was a Jesuit. Is that an exaggeration? Was he an ordained Jesuit or was he just Jesuit trained?
Well, I suppose the term we use is it was probably a lay Jesuit, a temporal coadjutor, which is in some ways they're probably just as important as full-on
Right.
ordained priests.
Yeah, but here,
Because
here amongst us, our team, we are very precise with our language. So, yeah, good job, George. Call him a lay Jesuit, kind of like a Tim Kaine kind of lay Jesuit. Hyper devout, not ordained.
Well, just really quickly, I noticed this Titanic Father Francis Brown, the Jesuit, has been almost like mystified, like the Jesuits that like with Hiroshima. And I'm just saying this because like I was at a family function last year, and just like it just happened. I started talking to this older guy, and he told me, I didn't even ask. He told me he was a Knight of Columbus.
Huh.
So I just I just kind of surface level stuff. I just talked to him a bit, and he's like, oh, and I kind of played dumb. He's like, "Oh, do the Knights of Columbus? You guys all over the world?" He's like, "Oh yeah." He's like, "Oh yeah." That was his response. but him and his wife are telling me about the quote miracle of Father Francis Brown with the Titanic.
Wow.
So you can see like the Jesuit propagandists probably have said that like, oh, like the power of the Rosary, guided Father Brown to get off the ship.
That's the kind of thing that keeps the soldiers motivated. It's the same thing for the maritime law and all that other bullshit. That only is important for the actual soldiers carrying out the tyranny. I mean, the citizens, it doesn't matter what they believe. The ones who are enforcing the papal tyranny, those are the ones that have to believe all the smoke and mirrors and the BS and the hype and the legends and the myths. In the same way that the so-called war on terror was started on the Battle of Lepanto. Is that right?
Yes. I always get that confused with the Battle of Vienna. One was September the 11th. The other one was October the 7th. I know I should be more up on this. What Lepanto was 16th century, like 1880 something, and Vienna was 17th century. I'll have to go look up those dates. However, as I said, one of the dates was September the 11th. The other was October the 7th. October the 7th was the day which okay, I want to choose my language carefully, is when the United States and other countries invaded Afghanistan.
Yeah, that's October. That's October, the Battle of Lepanto. That's where that's where the actual war, the United States, the secular Protestant Christian United States of America, started her needless war against Afghanistan on the Battle of Lepanto. But that's okay because
well, Archbishop Cardinal Edwin Frederick O'Brien was there in Afghanistan, cheering it on, giving mass to like the American troops, like in lots of cases, because it was the Catholic Archbishop I'm going to link the post I did on this guy. This is the quote just war theory idea, which can justify any papal crusade.
Let me say that's great points. That very frequently just war theory is wrongfully spun as evangelical and or Christian. It is absolutely Catholic and Crusader. Just war theory is Catholic and Crusader and has nothing to do with biblical Christianity.
Well, you can see, the wars. I know you mentioned this on like some of the previous broadcasts you've done, Johnny. But like I know, like at least with Afghanistan, like after the U.S. Army came over there the Catholic. It's just a side fact. The Catholic Church has a special archdiocese with the jurisdiction for the United States Army called Archdiocese.
Military. The entire United States military has its own archdiocese. That's correct.
And people don't know, like, and that all those, so they have chapels now and like all of the U.S. military bases, which are taxpayer funded. But the point being, though, just like I was going to in Afghanistan, like there's like almost no Christians left there now. In Iraq, the Christian population is almost completely wiped out, and the current leadership of Iraq is Jesuit trained, coincidentally, after the U.S. Army went in. Like the guy who was spoon feeding the U.S. Army, the pardon my language, the bullshit intelligence that Saddam had WMDs. The George Washington of Iraq, Ahmed Chalawi, was educated by Jesuits at Jesuit Baghdad College. He became the new oil minister after the U.S. came in. But like the current prime minister of Iraq till this day, Aden Abdul Mahdi, is trained by Jesuits, and he was a former communist. Also interestingly, but like you can see like so after the and like that school in Baghdad was founded by Father Edmund Walsh, S.J. You could say like the most powerful Jesuit of the 20th century. But it's not a coincidence. You see that after the U.S. military, as you'd say, the sword arm of the Catholic Church moves into Iraq, that the Jesuit Baghdad College, comes right into the forefront and is now like controlling Iraqi politics. I think even the New York Times commented that during the 2005 prime minister election, all three candidates went to the Jesuit college. Like that's pretty profound. The New York Times is covering this.
Your video on that is brilliant, and few examples are as illustrative as who owns the United States and who is abusing the United States military as her own. It is absolutely illustrative and indicative of how Rome owns and abuses the United States military as the so-called war on terror. Every place the United States military has gone, Christians have suffered. Every place. And as you have so brilliantly pointed out in your video, when the American military and government moved in, particularly in Iraq, she installed Jesuit-trained Middle Easterners in all key positions. You don't need any more from it. And this, the non-Christian, making these brilliant points about how Christians in Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, Egypt, anywhere the United States has needlessly injected chaos into stable nations. Christians suffer, as they have always suffered, as the very first Crusades weren't in the Middle East against Muslims and Jews. The very first Roman Catholic Crusades were in Europe against Christians. Nobody knows that.
Yeah, great point. That being the Albigense Crusade that people can
Albigense in
the Waldense Crusades.
Crusaders hunted them down in the Swiss Alps and threw them off cliffs, ripped open their pregnant women, threw their babies up in the air and caught them on spears. Just monstrous, absolutely monstrous.
But you can see just really quickly, just to jump in after this, George, is the ripping from the wombs is actually a tactic that the Catholic Ustashi use in Croatia. So like the exact same, and everyone should read Edmund. It's on my archive.org page. I'll link it. Everyone should read Edmund Paris's book, Genocide in Satellite Croatia. You can see that was essentially like a 20th century, Albigense style crusade that has been like completely like, it seems that like no one knows about this like genocide that took place in modern. This is just recently in the 20th century. The media doesn't talk about it. Like Stepniak was canonized, the Catholic priest looking over this massacre. So you can see that this is like the same 13th, 11th century style tactics, like in effect to this day.
Go ahead, George.
Yeah, jump in there.
Okay. Well, Eric basically said what I wanted to say. And yes, you're right. And we discussed this on our last show that Aloysius Cardinal Stefanik was canonized in 1998. And he was elevated to the cardinalate in 1952, even after
George, George, that was the beatification in 98 under JP2. The canonization actually came under the Jesuit Pope Francis, which I think makes it even more significant because Pavlich himself was trained by Jesuits. Stepniak was educated at the Jesuit Pontifical Gregorian College in Rome. The Krunoslav Draganovich, the chaplain of the Jasenovic concentration camp, was also trained by Jesuits. So I just want to make the point. It was the Jesuit Pope that canonized, this monster Stepniak.
And that canonization process, that becoming a saint in the Catholic Church, is a long, drawn-out process. It's not something that they took a monster and slipped him under the carpet. They had this bastard. There's a long process that includes miracles. I'm not quite sure what the miracle is. I think the miracle is the rewriting of this monster's history. as an absolute human animal, most vicious reptilian, almost, I would say, vicious human being. They have to be proposed, and I actually have this in my files. It's a long process. They have absolutely set on making this monster a saint, in the same way that they absolutely refuse to take Jimmy Savile off of their roles of papal knights. He's their boy. He's their hero.
Well, speaking of boys, and of course, what about our girl, quote, mother, end quote, Teresa? I actually saw the Christopher Hitchens documentary over the weekend. I'm sorry, I had a backlog, so I didn't watch until a couple days ago.
Oh yeah, just within that's on. I have that on my channel. I believe it's called Hell's Angels, or Hell's Angel, the expose that Hitchens did. And just before you jump in, after watching that video, Hitchens also just wrote like a little, probably like 100-page book on Mother Teresa. He didn't name the Jesuit, but Hitchens said that it was a Jesuit who inspired Mother Teresa to do her missionary work. They're jumping there, George.
Okay, so for those who are not in the know, we're talking about, quote, Mother Teresa, aka Agnes Gangsebiahu, who lived from 1910 to 1997. She was officially declared a saint in the Catholic Church 3 years ago in 2016 under Pope Francis. Now, she was born in Albania. She was trained in Ireland, but she spent the bulk of her life in Calcutta, India. And she has spent the majority of that time running this Sisters of Mercy or something like that, this hospice for dying people in Calcutta. And her theology notwithstanding, from almost all accounts, she and her staff did virtually nothing for the people in the hospital. They did not use sanitary equipment. They did not sanitize, they didn't wash their bed sheets, so that people basically went there to die, even though they may have had survivable conditions. Such as one of the things they mentioned in the Hitchens documentary is there was like a 15 or 16-year-old boy who had a kidney infection, which is a relatively minor problem, but because they did not give him anything like antibiotics, he died. That was just one example, but there were thousands of people, maybe tens of thousands of people who died over the course of decades and died miserably because they did not have the most basic care. I have some problems with modern medicine, but almost none of the nuns that worked there or volunteered there had any sort of medical training. They had very few doctors and nurses. And basically, from all accounts, they enjoyed seeing these people coming there to die.
I'm glad you're saying that, George, because I don't want people to just dismiss this as idiots being inept. They overtly caused the harm. She was a monster too. She also was very happy and pleased to traffic in infants and children from these poor people.
Not only that, on top of that is like, this is like, and she kicked her dog too, but this is like that. She had no qualms, even though she is supposed to be this paragon of virtue, modesty, humility, and all that sort of stuff. She had no qualms whatsoever hobnobbing with thugs. There's a video of her, of Ronald Reagan giving her the Congressional Medal of Freedom, or whatever it is you can give to a non-U.S. citizen. She got together on more than one occasion with Fidel Castro, with one of the
just people don't know that's a Jesuit, Fidel Castro.
Yes, Fidel Castro, and she got together with at least one of the Duvaliers in Haiti. She had no qualms.
In Georgia, she blessed their regime. And I found this guy's name. Just she blessed this thing about this. Like, you have a Catholic missionary blessing an atheistic Stalinist dictatorship in Albania. This is when Albania became like the first like atheist state, like post World War II, that wasn't the Soviet Union. But this is when Enver Hoxha was the dictator of Albania. And Mother Teresa, Hitchens shows like the footage. She went to this like atheist dictator's tomb and like blessed it. Like, are you kidding me? Like, that should just show you like how sacrilegious, the whole thing is. Like, she's literally like blessing the tombs of atheist dictators as a so-called a religious missionary or saint.
I wish Hawkeye could be in on the conversation, because this is gaslighting of monsters, to take some of the most evil people that the Catholic Church has ever known and to elevate them, and to eventually have such a power of propaganda that everyone believes the total opposite about these people, with the exception of somebody like Jimmy Savile, where shockingly, surprisingly, the truth finally got out after the monster is dead, and they still are refusing to back down on elevating him as they did. It's perfect gaslighting, and I'm joking about Hawkeye, because I'm sure they have done this with transgenders, trans testicles, elevating them up to be objects of lust for men, and meanwhile they're men themselves, and men become women and so forth. So the Catholic Church takes perverse pleasure in their psyops such as these. Their psychological operations.
Well, I would just say like she's been blown up. Like, just like where I went to high school in London, the closest Catholic high school to my house was called Mother Teresa Secondary School. Like, I bet just if you looked in the United States and Canada, I bet there's over literally maybe 100 Mother Teresa schools.
And those, good point, great point. And those kids have no idea. They have a bronze bust of that hag, idolized paintings of her up and down the hallways, and they have no idea who she is. No less that she's an absolute monster.
Oh, and just to tie this back into Stepniak, I'll share my screen here, because this Edmund Paris shows some photos in his book Genocide in Satellite Croatia of what Stepniak was overseeing. This is what the Catholic Eustaches did in Croatia. And Stepniak, who never once protested about this and was cheering on all these massacres, is now a saint. And, like Mother Teresa, there's a high school in New York City named after Archbishop Stepniak. It's called the Archbishop Stepniak High School. Cardinal Spellman actually lobbied along with the Knights of Columbus funds to build the school. But you can see here, this is what the Catholic Eustaches did. And now this, you see here, children in the Stara Gradiška concentration camp. Like, look at this. This is disgusting. This guy here, Andrita Artukovic, this guy was a devout Catholic. He was known, I guess, as the Croatian Himmler. This guy, this devout Catholic monster here, Artukovic, like, managed to get into the United States after these massacres. He was living in Los Angeles. As well, if people haven't seen these photos in Edmund Paris's book, and people should read the book. Here's the Eustache beheading a Serbian Orthodox priest. There's all sorts of quotes from Stepniak in this book. That's why I'm saying people should read this book. The leader of this whole movement, the Eustaches, is now canonized. Should tell people, like, that if anything, should tell people that the Catholic Church is never going to change. This should be it. In today's day and age, it's supposed of ecumenism, where we're all one, and like, oh, we're not going to persecute you anymore. We're all going to come together. Like, they're still honoring or canonizing like crusaders like Stepniak. It's pretty comical. It just shows you. Like, I think Haberman-Hatton just wrote that, like, the Vatican II reunion doctrine, that like we're all going to come together, like we're separated brethren, is like the greatest Trojan horse in like the history of man. Thing just shows that. Yeah, jump in, George.
Oh, excuse me. Well, this is something I mentioned to Eric before. The rationale for the Stefanik's apologists will say, well, he may have been brutal, but he was justified because, after all, he was fighting Freemasons, communists, and Jews. And people use the same argument for Franco and for Salazar in Portugal. And, of course, other dictators, because they may have been thugs, but their hearts were in the right place.
Oh, great point. You know, it's amazing. When Hitler especially ran on like international Jewish financiers are like out to get us, which is kind of comical because all of the biggest financiers of Hitler's Third Reich were devout Catholics, like Fritz Thyssen, for instance, and Franz von Papen. But yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, they have to just like in the movie 1984, like with George Orwell, they have to create an external boogeyman to justify all the tyranny that's taking place.
I want to underline the point that you just made, Eric, on ecumenism. Again, here is our non-Christian friend making these brilliant points. Christendom, Protestant Christians, real Christianity is absolutely dead. It's absolutely dead, with the exception of a handful of a couple of Seventh-day Adventists. And I don't even vouch for them except for our own beloved Walter Veit, that nobody in so-called evangelical Protestant Christianity has a clue. If they have anything negative to say about the Catholic Church, it's some convoluted idea about doctrine and salvation by works versus salvation by faith. That is the least watered down Casper milquetoast issue between real Christians and the Catholic Church. The real issues no one even comes close to touching, which is the Catholic Church is more powerful today than they ever were in medieval history, where the best example is Henry VIII having to ask permission just to get a divorce from his devout Roman Catholic Spanish wife. The real issues are the Catholic Church is the great whore of Babylon. And that's the other point, is her own theologians, her own Jesuit theologians have wiped her from Christian understanding and from prophecy. She's been completely erased from Daniel and Revelation. Those books scream out the Catholic Church. And Ribera and Alcazar and a whole army of Jesuits have erased her from Christian eschatology, where she has always been the fourth and final beast, the whore of Babylon, and the beast of the sea from Revelation 13. And just to tie this into what Eric said earlier, how proof that the United States, and I agree with Tupper Saucy that the United States was founded from the very beginning to be the sword arm of Rome. The biggest problem with the conversion, the metamorphosis of the Roman Empire into a religious empire, was that she lost her standing army, and she needed to use the armies of the Catholic nations that she controlled by proxy. And she got tired of that towards the end of the medieval age. The Catholic kings started to get a little wary of every time a pope would say, you need to go on a crusade. They'd suddenly say, you know what? Why am I spending my money and my soldiers? I could use them to make myself more riches. And so when these kings stopped listening to the Pope, sending them to commit wars all over the world, there was a new plan. And the plan was to have her own army and her own military. And that's what the United States is. I absolutely, it's one of the areas that I do commend Adventist teaching, particularly of guys like my friend Walter Veit, who clearly explain that the beast of this land is the United States, that forces everyone to worship the beast of the sea in Revelation 13. So, not to get too crazy, not everybody.
Johnny, I was gonna say, the Catholic bishops have almost even admitted this. I'm gonna link this. You see, yeah, it was you, Johnny, who sent the JPEG of the from newspapers.com all the way back in 1903. The Archbishop of Chicago, James Edward Quigley. I'm going to read exactly from the Archbishop's words. He made the bold proclamation that within 20 years, and he's saying this in 1903, within 20 years, this country, the United States, is going to rule the world. Kings and emperors will soon pass away, and the democracy of the United States will take their place. The West will dominate the country, and what I have seen of the Western patriarchal schools has proved that the generation which follows us will be exclusively Catholic. As you know, I'm going to screen share here so people can just see that I'm not making this up here. This was actually proclaimed by like a powerful archbishop, and now this archbishop has like a bunch of stuff named after him. Like, yeah, I know there's this Archbishop Quigley Seminary in Chicago. He says here, so continuing, when the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church will rule the world. That's exactly what you just said, Johnny. Essentially. This is being admitted by a Catholic Archbishop. The people of the East do not know the importance of Chicago in the West. The Catholics know that Chicago is one of the great centers of the world. In 50 years, Chicago will be exclusively Catholic. The same may be said of Greater New York and the chain of big cities stretching across the continent to San Francisco. It has never forced itself upon me. It's never forced itself on me, this conviction, as it has since I have been in Chicago. I am simply overcome by it. I am not telling you this to flatter you. I mean what I say. When I see what is going on, I am more than pleased. Nothing can stand against the church. I'm going to repeat, nothing can stand against the church. I'd like to see the politician who would try to rule against the church in Chicago. His reign would be short indeed. But I'll link this here. So this has been admitted from Catholic prelates that when the United States rules the world, the Catholic Church rules the world, and everyone should read Tupper Saucy's book. And I think a key part of what the Jesuit system of like feudalism with the U.S. From with the interview I did with Clint, going into, and I've looked into this more, is the president's emergency powers status. Like the Jesuits, I think influenced that clause in the Constitution where the president can essentially declare an emergency, and the Constitution is completely suspended. And now, the Senate report admitted since Scottish Rite Freemason Franklin Roosevelt signed the Emergency Banking Act that the United States has been in a perpetual state of national emergency. This is how they got the war in Iraq, because Congress didn't approve the war in Iraq, but Skull and Bones Bush signed the national emergency, and that bypassed Congress. So having this like legal innuendo, at the service of the president, I think is a way for the Jesuits to just extend the feudalism of Middle Ages Europe, where the king could do whatever he wanted, like the Catholic sovereign.
You're really selling me on the importance of Chicago, even though there are other major cities that play key roles, New York City and Boston and Baltimore and others. But certainly Chicago is an epicenter for the Catholic Church.
Oh, it's definitely one of the hubs. I don't know. It's hard to pick what the hub is. Yeah, definitely. I think Chicago is right in the thick of things, though. That's for sure. Just interesting. We could go into this, like the owners of the Chicago Cubs. And the Ricketts family. I'll link this article I wrote on them. We covered this a bit on the last show. Governor of Nebraska, Pete Ricketts, is a Knight of Columbus, Knight of the Holy Sepulchre, and sits on the Archbishop's Committee for Development. All of the Ricketts are like part owners of the Cubs. And then there's Todd Ricketts, who's Jesuit trained at Loyola Chicago, and he's currently the finance chairman of the Republican National Committee. Todd Ricketts, Jesuit trained, is also part owner of the Chicago Cubs. And the guy, the majority owner, Joe Ricketts in Chicago, TD Ameritrade was founded in Chicago by Joe Ricketts. There's offices in Chicago. It's based in Chicago and Nebraska primarily. But Joe Ricketts, the founder of TD Ameritrade, went to Jesuit Creighton, and they actually financed an entire Jesuit retreat house out of his own pocket. I'm gonna show you just a photo of this thing. This thing is I can't even imagine the real estate value of this Jesuit retreat. This is 936 acres. You can see this right here. This was completely gifted to the Jesuits by the owner of the Chicago Cubs. And I just showed you some of the background, like the Ricketts family, the Catholic Ricketts family that own the Cubs. Is part of they're just like the Kumos.
They're pushing a lot of smoke and BS right now about how the Catholic Church is suffering because she's having to pay off thousands and thousands of victims of the pedophile priests. The Catholic Church is not suffering. She has been stealing trillions across eons, and she continues to gain billions from the papists that she installs as the elite, as the business owners, as the presidents and prime ministers, everywhere. So
Johnny, I recommend everyone check out the video I did. This goes deeper than this. This is just like from a the stories I was able to find in probably like 45 minutes. But within 45 minutes of digging, I found since 2010, Jesuit. This is only Jesuit schools, not Catholic schools. Just Jesuit schools in the United States have gotten over $1 billion since 2010 in high-profile donations. Literally like $1 billion. So you can see, so like when you know that just on philanthropy, like they're getting, just you look at how much is coming in and how much is coming out. There's more coming in just on philanthropy than what they're paying out with all these sex abuse scandals. And people should. And I just highlighted Jesuit schools. Like I'll link this. Like Notre Dame University got $100 million donation in 2017 from graduate Kenneth Ritchie. $100 million here going to Catholic Notre Dame University. So if you were to actually quantify like all of the Catholic institutions, the donations they received just from 2010, like it would run into the billions and billions of dollars. Like just another huge one. Just I showed in the video Frank McCourt, who used to own the Los Angeles Dodgers, gave $100 million to Jesuit Georgetown University in 2013. John Sabartos of the Sabartos organization, a Silicon Valley real estate firm. John Sabartos gave $100 million to Jesuit Santa Clara, and then he gave $20 million to Boston, $15 million to the University of San Francisco, which is another Jesuit school. And and you can, like you said, like the elite send their kids to Jesuit schools. Like I covered John Paul Getty, the oil magnate. He was known as like a John, he was like as prominent in the oil industry as John D. Rockefeller. But John Paul Getty sent John Paul Getty Jr. and Gordon Getty to Jesuit University of San Francisco. And just in 2017, Gordon Getty gave the Jesuit University of San Francisco $15 million.
These are the same Gettys that use their ill-gotten billions to vacuum up any photograph or image, even images, paintings, lithographs that are in any way remotely embarrassing to the Vatican. Vacuum them up and copyright them.
Oh,
right? That's the same Getty family, the oil Gettys.
Oh, absolutely, and people don't know that. It's literally the same. Actually, let me pull this up here. I found this is the pattern though that all of the aristocrats do. Current, Stephen Rockefeller Jr., fifth generation Rockefeller, manages the Rockefeller Family Rocco Trust Fund. Stephen Rockefeller Jr. went to Jesuit Fairfield University, for instance. Like the chairman of the board of directors at Rockefeller Capital Management, John J. Brennan, is also the chairman of the board of trustees at the University of Notre Dame. But I just wanted to, I noticed that the elite, though, send their kids to Jesuit schools. And I just found some connections to Hearst here. Where was this? Yeah, so there's William Randolph Hearst II, who named after William Randolph Hearst, went to Jesuit University of San Francisco. That'd be William Randolph Hearst II. Then there was Anne Hearst, went to Jesuit Regis College in Denver, and Amanda Hearst went to Jesuit Boston College and Jesuit Fordham. So Anne Hearst, Amanda Hearst, and William Randolph Hearst II, they're all educated by Jesuits, part of the Hearst empire. But this if you go through all of the quote unquote robber baron families, you'll find Jesuit alumni in all of these guys' families.
And they don't even start off that way. Some of the Big Daddy founders are not Catholics, but they know who it is that put them where they are, and that's exactly what they do. They send their kids off to be indoctrinated by the Jesuits.
Actually, George Burling, was it Thurgood Marshall sent his son to Georgetown. And, Thurgood Marshall has been idolized. And, he now has there's a plaque or a monument of him at one of the big courthouses in Washington. Was that right, George? Though his son went to Georgetown.
Yeah, Johnny Marshall went to Georgetown, and but anyhow, if I could you were just talking about sports a moment ago. Oh, today is Game 1 of the World Series between the National League Washington Nationals and the American League Houston Astros. This is the first time the Nationals / Montreal Expos or Montreal Expos have been to the World Series. Well, the general manager of the Nationals is Mike Rizzo. And it says this even before you pull up his Wikipedia page. He went to Holy Cross High School and St. Xavier University in Illinois. So he was double dipped. So that reminds me of who is the general manager of the Golden State? Was it Myers? Robert Myers?
Oh yeah, Bob Myers. Yeah, he was educated by Jesuits at Loyola, I believe. And actually, George, while I found another really interesting just on the donation video, a Silicon Valley. Let me get the guy's name here. The Silicon Valley investor who gave $25 million to Jesuit Santa Clara is on the board of directors at the Golden State Warriors. So then keep going. I'm going to find that name and link it in the chat.
Well, anyhow, speaking of owners, well, she wasn't. Mars Schatz owned the baseball team, the Cincinnati Reds, from the 1970s up until about 20 years ago. And she was had a reputation for being tight-fisted, to say the least. But she was a notorious bigot. You know, she used all sorts of anti-black language, anti-Jewish, anti-Semitic language. And so anyhow, Mara Schott went to Sacred Heart High School in Cincinnati, Ohio. She was a devout Roman Catholic. And she said she was a big fan of Adolf Hitler. So even your owners of the past have been controlled by Rome. And you're talking about Jesuits could control towns in the U.S. People often forget about Cincinnati.
Actually, yeah, George, the current mayor of Cincinnati went to Jesuit Xavier. Let me get his name here. I know the Cincinnati police chief, Elliot Isaacs, also went to Jesuit Xavier. The Cincinnati Reds owner, Bob Castellini, has 2 Jesuit Georgetown degrees, for instance. But let me get the guy. Yeah, the mayor, actually, the current mayor, yeah, John Cranley, mayor since 2013. Yeah, he went to Jesuit St. Xavier High School, or I guess Catholic St. Xavier High School, and Jesuit John Carroll University. Yeah, that he's the 69th mayor of Cincinnati, educated by Jesuits. You're right, though. Cincinnati is a very, very completely controlled city, from what I've seen by the Vatican. And George, just quickly, the name, I don't know if you heard this name, George. The guy's name is Stephen Miller, the Silicon Valley guy. So Stephen Miller gave $25 million to Jesuit Santa Clara, and he's on the let me get his exact position with the Golden State Warriors. He's an executive board member with the Golden State Warriors. And just to wrap it up on the donations, just a couple of donations I thought were really intriguing were the ones that Jesuit Seattle University got. This was this year, 2019, they've gotten 2 separate $3 million donations from Amazon and Microsoft, which I find, very interesting. Because I think the Jesuit, it's probably projects through Jesuit Seattle University and Georgetown and Fordham, working through the Jesuit Department of Homeland Security, Amazon, and Microsoft, where the Jesuits are going to try to make a social credit score type of system in place in the United States, just how it is in the Jesuit China utopia. They want that type of social credit system in place. And people know the CIA officially got into a $600 million deal with Amazon, and then Amazon starts dishing all this cash out to these Jesuit schools, $3 million to Jesuit Seattle. And I have a post on my blog. Jeff Bezos gave $15 million to Catholic charities. Yeah, I saw that I recommend people should watch the video, but there's numerous high-profile donations. I know over Johnny's Way, Jesuit St. Joseph. Yeah, St. Joseph's got $50 million from this James J. McGuire, this insurance magnate in the Philly area. But $50 million. Some of these donations were huge. That these schools are receiving. But this in particular, that Microsoft Amazon donation to Jesuit Seattle University, I think is very, very intriguing. And actually, George, in the Amazon, no, this was the Microsoft article. It was admitted that there's 900 employees at Microsoft that are alumni of Jesuit Seattle University. That seems like a pretty high number of alumni just from one school. But yeah, I linked the video. That's all in the video I did. Is there anything you guys want to jump into? Anything particular here? I just wanted to wrap up with that with the donations to Amazon, or the donations from Amazon to Jesuit Seattle University, and just interesting. Just Jesuit Seattle University is where Mohammed Alabar attended, who is currently the biggest real estate developer in the Middle East. His company Amar Properties kind of built up all of Dubai to today, to his current dystopian look. The Amar Properties is building King Abdullah Economic City in Saudi Arabia, named after the Catholic Saudi King Abdullah, who is in the Order of the Golden Fleece. But Mohammed Alabar was actually on the board of directors at Jesuit Seattle University up until 2016. So it's a very it's almost like like a Georgetown on the West Coast. It's just or I guess it'd be like the Fordham on the West Coast, because Santa Clara is like the Georgetown of the West Coast, if you will. But it's a public sounding university, and there's all sorts of intriguing stuff going on there. But it's not a public university; it's a Jesuit school. Sorry, jump in there, George.
Well, this is something Johnny mentioned about a year and a half ago, in 2018 during March Madness. Look at how many teams are Catholic / Jesuitical that make it to the top 64. You almost always have at least half a dozen or so schools. You have Gonzaga, you have Xavier, you have Villanova, Loyola Chicago, and they almost always make it deep, like the top 4 or the top 2. And part of this could be, there's several reasons. Well, they recruit top talent, but also you have legacies. They say, well, I'm going there. My dad went there. My grandfather went there. My kids, my grandkids, they're going to go there. And of course, they get all these big donations, so they can hire the best coaches and draft the best players in America. But it's just like, a place like Gonzaga, for example, is, even though is a college team, it is not a professional team. It is almost as important as being a professional team.
I'll tell you,
it's a great point. And just a team, I noticed just Creighton, a Jesuit school, is always in the March Madness tournament, and quite a few NBA players come from Creighton. Sorry, jump in there, Johnny.
Yeah, I had Stupid Ball on over the weekend in the background, just as background noise, and I very often spend most of the time watching, having football muted, because the sounds of what the people say are too annoying and obnoxious. And I had to laugh because the Arizona Cardinals, named after the little red bird, not the Catholic clergy, right? Didn't they get moved out of Chicago? Weren't they originally in Chicago? The Chicago Cardinals. Anyway, could not brag enough about their new running back, Chase Edmonds. And it's funny, I'm laughing because they're actually telling you that he is from Fordham repeatedly. I heard from no fewer than 3 different commentators that felt it was necessary to say that this new star running back from the Cardinals comes to you direct from Fordham. And
that's good. I'm gonna have to find that clip. That's that could be. I have the guys. I'll link this. The owner of the Cardinals, Johnny and George, Bill Bidwell. Let me see. He's owned the team since 1970. Well, I guess he just died in 2019. So it's probably his son who took over. Bill Bidwell went to Jesuit Georgetown Prep and Jesuit Georgetown.
Yeah, that's how these papists roll. They make sure that they maintain their power and their status inside. Look, feudalism is alive and well today, and that includes politics. Do we have the time to go through all the Roman Catholic families that dominate politics, particularly in the United States? the Kumos, the Dodds, the list is endless.
I found just the Landrews are basically like the Roman
Landrews is in Boggs is in Louisiana. Yeah, you bet.
Oh,
and how many times do those families bleed off from politics into journalism and back to politics? Kumoses and Boggses and on and on.
No, it's funny though. Like they can't help themselves and interject this. You know, like you have to know what to look for. You know, like it's all in plain sight. Like because most of the sports announcers themselves, if you look into it, you know, are Catholic or have Jesuit degrees as well.
Yeah, great point.
You know, there's like we covered some of the names like on previous shows, but like Michael Wilbon from Pardon the Interruption went to St. Ignatius Prep near Chicago. Tony Reale, his show is Around the Horn on ESPN. Tony Reale went to Jesuit Fordham. Michael Smith on ESPN, his show is what was this? His show is called like his name Michael. Let me get the name of the show. His show is called like the Numbers Cast or something. Let me get this exact show here, because I used to watch, like when I was a kid and I wasn't awake to this stuff, like I used to watch all these guys' shows. But like I found out that all these guys are educated by Jesuits.
How about Tony Kornheiser? Is he just
Kornheiser? So Kornheiser is the co-host with Michael Wilbon on Pardon the Interruption. Michael Wilbon went to the Jesuit college. I'm not sure.
There you go.
Yeah. But Michael Smith's show is Numbers Never Lie. He's the head host of the show Numbers Never Lie. Bill Simmons is known as the common, like your average Joe, like American, like dedicated American sports writer. Bill Simmons went to Jesuit College of the Holy Cross, for instance. And this stuff's co-opted. Bill Simmons went on the Jesuit trained Bill Simmons, the sports guy, had Joe Rogan on his show a couple years ago, and I know they were making fun of like people who believed in conspiracy theories.
Yeah, Rogan would be able to tell you that, the sellout compromised clown that he is.
Oh, I agree, but people don't realize that like how it's literally like nothing's changed from the bread and circus concept from the ancient Roman Empire. Like, I don't know if you saw the video I did this, but is it a coincidence that so you got Jesuit trained at Georgetown professor Veet Din drafts the USA Patriot Act or the U.S. Patriot Act in 2001, basically turning America into a full-out like police state and surveillance state. Like the state and its agents can do whatever it wants, and this was drafted by Jesuit trained at Georgetown professor Veet Din. So in 2001 is when the Patriot Act is drafted. 2001 is the first year the New England Patriots win their Super Bowl. And the New England Patriots had not won anything before the Patriot Act was signed, and now they've won 6 Super Bowls to this day. The commissioner of the NFL at the time, Paul Tagliabue, was the chairman of the board of directors at Jesuit Georgetown University. For instance, we know how Catholic Tom Brady is. He went to see the Pope. It was actually the U.S. ambassador to the Vatican, Jim Nicholson, who arranged the meeting with Brady and the Pope. But you can see though, the point being though, it's all kind of in plain sight. Like they want, like you mentioned, after 9/11 was you saw the mindless flag waving, shoved down everyone's face, and they have to have the team that has the American flag on their uniform, win all these Super Bowls. And the Patriots, when they launched the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, that's when the Patriots won their first trifecta of Super Bowls. And obviously Bill Belichick's daughter Amanda Belichick coaches the lacrosse team at Jesuit Holy Cross. The offensive coordinator Josh McDaniels went to Jesuit John Carroll. But you can see it's all storylines. I think it's all Jesuit theater, because the Patriots, there's lots of footage on this. It's been rigged for them systematically the last 15 years, and Tom Brady has gotten it's crazy. When I wasn't awake to this stuff, I would get mad at some of the bullshit pass interference calls that would go the Patriots way. But they've been propped up as quote unquote America's team since 9/11, but it's just the correlations like that. The Patriot Act drafted by Jesuit Georgetown professor Veet Din is drafted in 2001. The commissioner of the NFL at this time, Paul Tagliabue, is the chairman of the board of directors at Jesuit Georgetown. And the Patriots only start winning Super Bowls after the Patriot Act is signed. Patriots. And so ultimately, it's all theater, at the end of the day. And it legally, like the NFL, can legally script and rig all of its games because it's entertainment. Like there's actually a recent court case where a NFL fan sued the NFL for that reason. He said this is rigged. I believe it's rigged. As a fan, I'm entitled to watch an honest football match, and he lost the case because the court said the NFL is entertainment, so they're allowed to script.
Yeah, there are no laws. There are no laws that prohibit fixing either college or professional, certainly football. There are no laws to it. They can fix as many games as they want. And by the way, both Joe Rogan, who is viciously anti-Christian asshole, pardon my language, and Dana White are former Catholics. Dana White, good altar boy, that now run UFC. UFC is akin to pornography, the way they debase women and have women fight. And the women they pick are not indicative of women who practice Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and all that shit. It's absolutely barbaric.
Well, absolutely. That's why I think the agenda is to get you addicted to barbaric, just I guess mindless entertainment, rather than educating yourself, informing yourself on how you're being completely
brilliant point. Let me tell you something. I am absolutely full in 100% for the independence of women, for women to be completely adept at personal defense, and that has nothing to do with the despicable UFC and wrestling. And as we get into the Catholic dynasty, the McMahon Catholic dynasty in wrestling, and what exploitation that is, particularly of the women involved in that as well, absolutely despicable. I'll give you some of the names real quick on the bread and circuses of modern sports. Babe Ruth, Freemason and Knight of Columbus. Bob Costas. Remember, Bob Costas had to interject gun control in one of his games not too long ago. Leftist Catholic, surprise. Brandy Chastain from women's soccer. Everybody knows the picture of her ripping her shirt off because that's what men do, so women can do it too. Santa Clara, good Jesuit-trained girl that she is. Brent Jones, 49ers tight end, Santa Clara. Brett Favre, the junk texter. His wife is devout Roman Catholic.
Oh, is that Brett or Favre, the America's gridiron man, the quarterback?
Yeah, the guy that comes on to female sportscasters by texting his crotch to them.
Well, you probably the Catholics and Fox News, probably gave him some tips on
Yeah, they would know, wouldn't they? Well, the good Catholics of Fox News know how to send as O'Reilly did, gay porn, and Eric Bolding. You showed me he's Loyola. Is it Loyola Prep out of Chicago again? Another Chicago boy.
Oh yeah. I think it's Loyola Academy. Yeah, but that's right there in Chicago.
Yeah, let's see. Chris O'Brien out of Chicago. Connie Mack. Dan Pastorini, the Oiler quarterback, also Santa Clara. Dana White we talked about. Let's see. Alex Rodriguez. Christopher Columbus, Roman Catholic High School, Miami. Floyd Patterson, the boxer, Roman Catholic. James Braddock, boxer. Jim McKay, coach, right? Joe Namath, which I think it was George brought him up. Or no, it was Hawkeye brought him up, right? Hungarian Catholic with his creepy pantyhose commercials. John Mara, Roman Catholic, Jesuit-trained Giants owner. John York.
Oh, and I'm just saying you're going the Niners and the Giants. Yeah, there's 2 or 3 Jesuit-trained Maras who all own the Giants. I was describing earlier how the devout Jesuit-trained Ricketts all own the Chicago Cubs.
Yeah.
Sorry, keep going there, Johnny.
And York, owner of the 49ers, of course, Newt Rockne. You had to blow him up. Plenty of propaganda there, and Notre Dame. Lance Armstrong is Roman Catholic, the big cheater. Lou Albano, the pro wrestling manager, good Roman Catholic. Lou Holtz, of course, from Notre Dame. Michael Jordan is a sleeper. Most people don't know. I
actually, Johnny, Michael Jordan sent his 2 sons to Jesuit Loyola Academy.
Net worth $1.1 billion. Michael Jordan.
Yeah, actually, you can find the story. Maybe I'll find it here quickly while you're talking and link it in the chat. But I know Michael Jordan actually donated some money to I believe it was a Catholic school in Chicago.
Yeah, this list is not, I repeat, not inclusive. These are just names that pop up when I'm doing other things, so I just collect them in one spot. Mike Ditka, the Chicago Bear coach that made.
Oh, yeah, Johnny, he's a 4th degree knight, I'm pretty sure.
Of Columbus?
Yeah, Knight of Columbus.
Yeah, good point. Mike Krzyzewski, Duke basketball coach. Mike Perea, vice president of NFL officiating. Pat Bowling, owner of the Broncos. Patrick Ewing, the basketball player, is from Georgetown and is now a Georgetown coach. Pete Rozelle, University of San Francisco. Is Rozelle Jewish? I think Pete Rozelle is Jewish. Is that another
Jesuit-trained he's Jesuit-trained, but I think he's a French Huguenot descendant.
Okay.
But, educated by
trader. Okay, even better.
Jesuit-trained.
Huguenot trader. Philip Rivers, Rick Pitino. Rick Pitino with his scandals. Robert Kraft is a papal court Jew. Robert McNair owns.
Johnny, just people. I mentioned this earlier. Robert Kraft, he donates. The owner of the Patriots donates to the local Jesuit colleges. Very particularly, he donates to College of the Holy Cross and Boston College. But Robert Kraft, the court Jew, has a seat on the board of governors at the Chief Executives Club at Jesuit Boston College.
Oh, that's helpful. Roger Federer was at. Tennis, right? Net worth $350 million. Roger Staubach, also a multimillionaire from the Dallas Cowboys, good Catholic. Ron Guidry, the baseball player. Scott Boras, cutthroat baseball lawyer and manager. And, of course, good old Shirley Povich, the Jesuit-trained Jew who wrote sports for the Washington Compost for 20 years. Stan Musial, the baseball player. Steve Bisciotti. Is that what I'm saying? It looks like Biscotti. Steve Bisciotti, I will say. Owner of the Ravens. Steve Nash, of course, the leftist Roman Catholic basketball player. Tara Lipinski.
Steve Nash went to Jesuit Santa Clara, and he's known as the greatest basketball player in Canadian history.
Right. Jeremy says he's got NASCAR people. I don't have any NASCAR names. Go ahead and send them in, Jeremy. Of course, Tom Brady, and the name and face of professional football could not be any more. Basically, a lay Jesuit, Vince Lombardi. He was Jesuit trained. He was a almost priest. You don't get any more.
Oh, Johnny, I found a source. This was from I think the Vince Lombardi scrapbook. He was a Knight of Malta as well, and he was a Knight of Malta, a 4th degree Knight of Columbus. There's a Knights of Columbus lodge, I think, in New Jersey called the Vince Lombardi Council. And yeah, like you said, he went to Jesuit Fordham University. He's been honored at Jesuit Fordham, I think 6 or 7 times. Like they have some of their athletic facilities there named after Vince Lombardi at Jesuit Fordham. And as you said, like he was going to become a Catholic priest. He went to a Catholic seminary in Brooklyn. He's the face of American football. Like you said, this guy's literally like a lay Jesuit, literally like Knight of Malta, 4th degree Knight of Columbus.
Yeah, if you want to prove how sports are Roman bread and circuses, you just use football and Vince Lombardi.
And Johnny, I know that the NFC trophy is named after George Papa Bear Hallis, who is just as Catholic as Vince Lombardi. George Papa Bear Hallis was trained by Jesuits at Loyola. He's actually known as one of the founders of the NFL. He was the longtime owner and coach of the Chicago Bears. But George Papa Bear Hallis trained by Jesuits at Loyola Chicago, and he was given the sword of Ignatius of Loyola in the 50s. And the current NFC Championship game is named after him. And George Papa Bear Hallis, was almost just like a lay Jesuit figure, just like Vince Lombardi. Like they have it completely owned.
Out of good old Chicago.
Okay, and if I could just throw in a couple more names for baseball, you have Yogi Berra, the catcher of the Yankees. You have Joe DiMaggio, Mickey Mantle, Whitey Ford, Phil Rizzuto, I mean, almost all your Hall of Fame Yankees. Bob Casey, the announcer for the Yankees. So almost all your prominent figures of the Yankees for almost 100 years were Catholic.
Well, you know what, George? This is in Aber Manhattan's book, The Vatican Billions, and I saw this in Martin Larson's book, Church Wealth and Business Income. But the Knights of Columbus actually bought Yankee Stadium. The Knights of Columbus actually own Yankee Stadium, and that's why there's a plaque of Pope. I think it's Pope John Paul II. There's a plaque of him actually on the outside of the Yankee Stadium structure.
Well,
and it kind of has a mystique of a Roman Colosseum almost and you're absolutely right. The Yankees. I'll pull up some names here now. It's good that we're putting this all out there. I'll pull up some more names of the Yankees. But with the Georgetown, the more sports figures. You know that you guys know Dikembe Mutombo?
Basketball player. Yeah, he's a center. Wasn't he for the Houston Rockets for a while?
Houston Rockets and with Philadelphia. And interestingly, Mutombo and Allen Iverson were the stars of the Philadelphia 76ers together. Both Mutombo and Allen Iverson went to Jesuit Georgetown. But Dikembe Mutombo, he's on the board.
You talking about practice?
Yeah, he's a good basketball player. But people don't know that he went to Georgetown, and that's why the NBA rigged the 2001 conference finals against the Milwaukee Bucks, because the Georgetown, obviously the two stars from Georgetown are going to go to the finals if they're on the same team. That's how the Jesuits do it. But Ray Allen actually admitted he was the star player of the Bucks at the time that the NBA was rigged. After that series, Jesuit-trained Allen Iverson shot more free throws than the entire Bucks team. But Mutombo is currently on the board of directors at Jesuit Georgetown. He's a charity for children, I believe. And Jesuit Georgetown is funding Mutombo's charity, which I think is a little concerning. And another big sports figure from Georgetown is Patrick Ewing. Patrick Ewing was the star of the New York Knicks. I believe he even coached at the Georgetown basketball team. But Patrick Ewing is on ESPN and stuff to this day, I believe. Patrick Ewing was the face of the NBA, especially when Jordan retired for those 2 years. And I linked the source. Apparently, Michael Jordan gave. It looks like he gave $5 million to the Hales Franciscan High School. That was the link I was looking for. So Michael Jordan gave $5 million to the Catholic Church there in Chicago. This one donation. If you guys want to jump in there, I just wanted to add those connections with Georgetown, with the and
you know what? We also
so profound. Just quickly, it's literally profound how many sports guys Julian Edelman, the MVP of the Super Bowl last year, went to Jesuit Bellarmine College Prep. Matt Ryan, the star quarterback of the Atlanta Falcons, went to Jesuit Boston College. Dwayne Wade, the All-Star basketball player who won 2 MVPs, 3 NBA Finals for Dwayne Wade, a longtime Miami Heat star. Dwayne Wade went to Jesuit Marquette. So when you look into actually where all these sports stars, it's profound. How much control the Rome.
It's
the Jesuits.
I tell you, it's also upsetting and depressing how many talented young men and women have been pushed aside because they didn't have a Jesuit pedigree.
Or Catholic. I mean,
if you using the format is first and foremost being Roman Catholic, being Catholic educated, Jesuit educated, having a Catholic family. Then you can get into the sexual deviance and a smattering of Jews. But the formula that we have shown again and again, if you don't fit that formula, you don't get into power in any venue, period.
Well, funny, I remember reading a Fluff and Puff piece by a book a few years ago by Johnny Bench, the Hall of Fame catcher for the Cincinnati Reds. And one of the things he mentioned was that only 3% of the players who make it in the minor leagues ever make it to the majors. So that's roughly 1 out of 30 or thereabouts. So if you have a Catholic background, Catholic/Jesuitical background, does that increase your chances of making it to the big leagues? if you're Joe Blow from nowhere, and let's say you're some type of Protestant, and you're not a Freemason, and you're not a sexual deviant, but you're a good baseball player, the odds are you'll never make it. You'll get anywhere near the pros because you don't have the right background, as you're saying. However, if you're a decent player, if you're Catholic, let's say you went to Villanova, uh, or something like that, and that greatly increases your chances of making it to the major leagues. So that's just simply a hypothesis on my part. But now you're just talking about having the right pedigree, having the right religious background in order to make it into sports, politics, entertainment. Um, this is a segue into something I sent you a couple weeks ago on Red Fox, nee John Sanford, who lived from 1922 to 1991. He was probably best remembered for most people for his TV show he had in the 1970s called Sanford and Son. Red Fox grew up Roman Catholic, and he actually attended a Catholic boarding school in Milwaukee. And in one of his comedy routines in the 1970s, which aired on HBO, he said concurrently he was going to this Catholic boarding school and was an altar boy and was a pimp. He was a pimp for several years, and he was actually fairly successful from what I understand. So, as I said, you had Red Fox, who did this TV show Sanford and Son in the 1970s. Also, his co-star Lamont Wilson was also grew up Roman Catholic, and he himself was an altar boy. Now, Sanford and Son was supposed to be set in South Central LA, and it's about this junkyard dealer, Fred Sanford, and his son, hence the name. And it was supposed to be basically a black version of All in the Family. Now, I'm going to pump the ball to Johnny, so maybe he can talk a little bit more about All in the Family.
Well, you say you're trying to warm me up, George?
No, I said I was going to pump the ball to you so you could talk about All in the Family.
Yeah, I had not prepped anything for it other than to say that the purpose of the show, it was another far left Jew, Norman Lear. The purpose of the show is to mock Protestant America with Roman Catholics pretending to do so, Carol O'Connor, and Jews, and the son of Jesuit-trained Carl Reiner, who went to the Georgetown School of Foreign Service, because every comedian Jew needs to be able to know how to, sign a diplomatic agreement or whatever the reason he went to. Carl Reiner did, and Rob Reiner, his far-left Jewish son, part of that show as well. I don't have anything off the top of my head other than the offensive nature of the show was meant to mock us. So.
Okay, so you had these programs during the 1970s that were comedy. But as I said, sometimes humor can be more damaging than drama because it's easier to laugh at something and mock something. And by doing that, you can condition people to accept certain behaviors. Because one of the regular characters on Sanford and Son was was Fred's antagonist, Aunt Esther. And he was always making jokes about how ugly she was and how mean and how nasty. But she was a devout Baptist. She had her Bible, and she was constantly rebuking Fred for his language and his drinking and things like that. And so there again, she was like Aunt Esther was basically a foil, as I said, not only for Fred, but for the writers of the show to basically denigrate Bible-believing Christians, to make them appear to be buffoons, to be hypocrites, to be judgmental, and all those, to basically be modern-day Puritans, or the negative stereotypes of Puritans.
Well, they consistently do this, like what Alex Pelosi's Nancy Pelosi, and I don't know if you saw it's a very revealing soundbite. I have her on my channel. This was when Pope Francis, the Jesuit, was just elected, but she was getting really excited about the Pope, the new Pope Francis, and but I know, but Nancy Pelosi's Jesuit trained daughter. Alexandria Pelosi, she made a whole documentary about evangelicals, like, zeroing in on evangelicals and making like evangelicals look like they're the root of our problems. So it's a Jesuit tactic, a classic Jesuit tactic to shift the attention off of them and getting you to think that like the Pentecostals or the Baptists or the just Protestant thing, like Protestant evangelicals are our problems, is in Jesuit interest. And I linked this article. I think you guys would like this. This is from Angelus News, but this article was called "Pro Football's Hall of Fame: 38 are from Catholic colleges." And this article lists like the Catholic colleges, like where the alumni come from. Like I won't go through it all because it would take a bit too long. But like for instance, like Don Shula, who's known as like the greatest football coach, like one of the greatest football coaches in NFL history. Don Shula went to Jesuit John Carroll University, and he's in the Hall of Fame. So I recommend you check out this Hall of Fame. It'd be interesting to see like what percentage of the football Hall of Fame list members like are Catholic versus non-Catholic. But 38 are Catholic, which seems like a very high number.
Yeah, it's probably almost certainly not commensurate with the population.
Oh, definitely not. It'd probably be like just how 80% of the New York Police Department is Catholic. 90% in top leadership positions. I would maybe even say 95%. And actually, I did a post actually. Maybe I'll pull this up here quick. I'll read some of the names because it's they've in control of the New York police. Like who is the policeman during, or the chief of, or I guess the commissioner of the NYPD during 9/11 was a Catholic. What was his name? Carrick. Yeah, and he went to fight in Iraq afterwards. But this is what I write here. So you have the current first deputy commissioner, chief of department, chief personnel, chief of strategic initiatives, and deputy commissioner for legal matters at the NYPD were all trained by Jesuits at Fordham University. Also, the NYPD cop who was responsible for supervising the World Trade Center during 9/11, he too went to Jesuit Fordham, and that his name is Darren Porcher. But just so with the Benjamin Tucker is the current first deputy commissioner. He got his doctorate from Fordham. The current chief of department at the NYPD, Terrence A. Monahan, got his doctorate or got his Bachelor's of Arts from Jesuit Fordham. The chief of personnel at NYPD, William T. Morris, got his doctorate from Jesuit Fordham. I mentioned Darren Porcher. He got his doctorate from Jesuit Fordham. Porcher, from a government website, says during the terrorist attacks in Manhattan in 2001, he was responsible for the supervision and rescue and recovery of victims in the World Trade Center complex.
Or selected non-recovery.
In other words, that's more like it. But Darren Porcher didn't just go to Jesuit Fordham. He also went to St. Joseph's College and Marist College, two Catholic institutions. And the current chief of strategic initiatives at the NYPD, John Donahue, has his has his doctorate from Fordham and MBA from Catholic Manhattan College. That's John K. Donahue.
Donahue with a name like Donahue? Are you sure he's Catholic? That doesn't sound right.
He must be Lutheran, eh? And just
Lutheran.
The last one here is the NYPD Deputy Commissioner of Legal Matters. He's a judge, James P. O'Neill. James P. O'Neill has a doctorate from Catholic Villanova, a master's from Catholic St. Joseph Seminary, and a Bachelor of Arts from Jesuit Fordham. So, this is pretty profound. And I found a source here that the 2018 New York City Law Enforcement Explorers Academy, quoting from their website, the academy operates Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. at Jesuit Fordham University in the Bronx. So they're actually training cops at Jesuit Fordham. That's just an example. Like when any like hierarchical organization, you're going to see an unproportionate amount of Jesuit-trained Roman Catholics
Yeah,
in leadership positions.
It's funny because when they were blowing up that running back, what did I say his name was? Cardinals running back.
Arizona. Let me pull up the guy's name here. Yeah, you said he went to. They mentioned it 3 times that he went to Florida.
Yeah, because they've repeatedly. Oh, jeez, come on. They repeatedly were saying Fordham right across the street from apparently the stadium where they were playing the New York Giants.
Oh, that's probably okay. That makes sense. Yeah, but the guy's name here is Chase Edmonds.
Yeah, Edmonds. Yeah. Because they were blowing up how, hey, he's right across the street, and I think he's from Harrisburg here in Pennsylvania. So, yeah, repeatedly blew this guy up. I mean, he's a good running back, but they repeatedly made the connection that he was from Fordham, right across the street from the stadium.
Oh, excuse me, Johnny and Eric, you're talking about famous NFL coaches. I'm sure you both have heard of Bill Parcells, who's a coach of the New York Giants, or was, among other teams. Well, his father, Charles Parcells, was a running back at Georgetown. Afterwards, he became a lawyer for the FBI and for Union Tires. So Bill Parcells' dad, Charles, as I said, was a running back at Georgetown, and he worked for the FBI. So I just wondering, so about 2 different things, or several different things. You're talking sports, the FBI. So I guess that's how Bill Parcells got his big break in the NFL.
Oh, that's great information on Bill Parcells. Well, and I was just gonna say, like, this came to my mind. It's one big Jesuit happy family. I guess Emmitt Smith, the legendary Cowboys running back, sent his son to Jesuit Dallas Prep, I believe, and his name's Emmitt Smith Jr. Where's the same number? It's interesting that he went to Jesuit Dallas. So I presume he'll probably be a really high draft pick coming out of, or he'll get to Jesuit Dallas is the high school. He'll get to I wonder if he'll go to a Catholic college, but I presume he'll be a high draft pick. You know, it's interesting though. All these guys, like you just mentioned with the Parcells family, all these guys, have, intriguing backgrounds that all connect, back to Rome if you look hard enough. Because it's all about, propping up like mindless entertainment, which is all what like the NFL and all, sports are. It's in the Jesuit interest to have, all of us just completely distracted and completely immersed in like their rigged, sports theater entertainment. It's almost like no different. It's like almost like an extension of the Jesuit theater plays in Middle Eastern Europe. It's all of it ultimately comes down to like distract and like hypnotize like the public.
Well, this is something I think I mentioned on the show before. If you're talking about sports, whether you're talking about professional or collegiate, if you're just talking about 2 sports, say baseball, basketball, for instance, you could be occupied with those 2 sports exhibition. You could talk about those. Hey, is my team going to make a trade? Or we're going to get a new manager, new coach, whatever.
Oh, you're cutting in and out a little bit there, George. I heard of some.
Oh, okay. Well,
no, you're absolutely right though. Keep going, but yeah, you absolutely. There's so much news with sports stuff. Just for instance, like I know just when free agency come around in July 1st, like it's just article after article after article. If you go to ESPN Sports or Fox Sports, they're just pumping out video after video after video after video after video, and there's so much stuff for you to consume that like you can literally spend like entire days and weeks, consuming just sports media.
Well, a few years ago, I remember hearing an ad for a local cable company for their sports packages. They said you can get something like 800 or 900 hours of sports a month. Any sport, professional, collegiate, whatever. Well, if you do the calculus, that's more hours than there are in a month. So you basically could spend your entire free time watching sports, taping it or TiVoing it or whatever it is you do. And you could be, as I said, forget working, forget sleeping, forget eating or anything like that. You could just spend all your time watching sports. And I realize most people aren't, even if they're that addicted, they're not going to spend that much time watching it. However, that is an option.
Yeah, there's a balanced view, and Joe's piping in on it. There's a balanced view. I absolutely understand. Even from a Christian perspective, your goal is to provide. If you're married and have a family, your highest responsibility is to provide for your family, and that's a lot of work. And you can and should have an opportunity to blow off steam and relax and escape from your daily grind. But where you put that, whether or not you immerse yourself in it and you allow it to run your life, is a different issue.
Well, fair enough. And I'm not saying condemning sports per se, whether you're talking about professional or otherwise. But if you like basketball so much, why not join a team? Join an amateur team. You play with or just play a pickup game with your buddies.
There's plenty of opportunities, and it can be very rewarding in the small time farm leagues and whatnot. Get involved in softball at work, basketball. I agree with you, George. It's often more fun and more rewarding to participate than it is to watch it, especially when you realize, as you vest yourself emotionally, mentally in these games and teams, and it's just so thoroughly fixed. You watch some of these college football games, man, you don't need any more example of understanding just how fixed these games are. I'm absolutely convinced that Peyton Manning purposefully threw his Super Bowl against the was it Seahawks? Who did he? That
was that Brady. That's when they were right on the goal line, and they could have give the ball to. They had the best short yardage running back in the entire NFL.
The Seahawks threw that Super Bowl too. And Manning, when he was Broncos, played a Super Bowl and then came back the next year. I'm absolutely convinced that he threw that. Let me figure out which Super Bowl that was. And was allowed to come back and win the next one. He is just Mr. Everything. He gets all kinds of. Let me tell you.
I think you're talking about the Super Bowl where they got blown out by Seattle.
Yes.
In the very first play of the game, there was a safety.
Couldn't even score a touchdown. I mean, come on, are you for real? Are you kidding me? And I think you have a clue as to how owned an individual is by the machine. At all the money they make in commercials. When you see these guys popping up in commercial after commercial after commercial, they are selected and chosen to make big money. I mean, somebody like Shaquille O'Neal is still making commercials, the good Freemason that he is.
Actually, I'm pretty sure, was this you found this, George? Did Shaq get an honorary degree recently from a Catholic college?
Well, I wish I would have said that, but I did not.
I thought that was I know that someone in the team. I might be able to find that in the emails. But yeah, I'm pretty sure that's out there. Shaq recently got an honorary degree from a Catholic college, and he openly showed off his Freemasonic ring on live television, on TV. And just another quick example, just a great classic rigging job. And just Pete Carroll, the coach of the Seahawks, who allowed the Patriots to win in 2014. Pete Carroll is a Catholic. You can predict with the last name Carroll. But literally in that play, they had 4 attempts to give the ball to the best short yardage running back in the NFL on the goal line, and they decided to throw it. Any a high school football coach would have won that game. Another one was when the Patriots played the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons were up by 27 points at the halftime, and they only ran the ball 3 times in the second half. Are you kidding me? Like any high school football coach knows if you're winning a football game up like 25 at the halftime, you run the ball to run out the clock. But the Falcons kept throwing it and throwing it. Like there are actually plays where you could see the running back Freeman deliberately allowed Matt Ryan to get sacked, which put the Falcons out of field goal range. But interesting, Matt Ryan, the quarterback of the Falcons, went to Jesuit Boston College, and self-sabotage. So he was part of the self-sabotage ultimately. But that's the game. If you watch the Falcons Patriots game, Arizona or Atlanta was getting 5 or 6 yards per rushing attempt the entire first half. Like the Patriots could not stop them running the football, and then they just completely stopped running the football for some reason. It was literally it was so crazy. Like they literally went from running the ball and dominating the game to just completely stopping running. And it's harder to find a clearer example of a rigged Super Bowl. And like I mentioned earlier, the NFL can legally rig and script all of their games. Like all of the sports associations can legally do it because it classifies as entertainment. Like at the end of the day.
Well, that's all I had on sports. I got some stuff in the folder, and I gotta take off soon. You guys, Eric probably does too. George brought up Rudolf Hess, who was the commandant at which concentration camp?
Rudolf Hess was the advisor to Adolf Hitler. That was Haas. What was it? I'll have to pull this.
Okay, he's Adolf Hitler's deputy Führer.
Okay, so Rudolf Hess went to University of Vienna, Universität Wien, which was in the 20th century a secular school, but the Jesuits used to run it. So in other words, the Jesuits still run it.
All right, yeah. I came across the University of Vienna in researching not too long ago, recently. And you're right. I think it was Ferdinand I installed the Jesuits at Vienna to make sure it was owned by the Catholic Church for 150 years.
Yes. So then in the 19th century, it became, quote, secularized, end quote, which translation means the Jesuits still run it. But they just do serve.
Yeah, those and Eric might speak to this. Trudeau's school is another example of a Jesuit school that went public, and everybody's supposed to just shrug off the fact that it has Jesuit roots. We're supposed to assume that the Jesuits just pulled completely out of these schools, part and parcel. They have nothing to do with them anymore.
Absolutely, yeah. That school is the College de Jean Brébeuf. But when all the Trudeaus attended, it hadn't been quote unquote nationalized yet. So the Trudeaus were there while it was Jesuit college.
What happens to these Jesuits that are teaching these classes? They all leave, right? It's like the Jesuit suppression in 1773. They all just disappear, right? They pull them out. Cops come in, they force them out. They go on the ships and they kick them out. No, they stay. They continue to teach.
No, they're in Mars.
Yeah, right. Who? Which clown is it? That three-named CIA clown that said they don't look for the kids that are being kidnapped and sex trafficked?
Oh, is that Catholic Robert Steele?
Yeah, was it Robert David Steele? Another CIA whistleblower, ex-CIA whistleblower? No such thing. McGovern, another Jesuit, hyper devout Jesuit trained ex-CIA whistleblower. Ray McGovern, Robert David Steele.
Yeah, Ray McGovern's on Russia Today all the time.
Yeah,
trained Ray McGovern, and that should show people that there's an absolute Jesuit agenda to blame all of the problems of the world on the Jews and Israel. Like Jesuit trained Ray McGovern will just go on and say the Zionists are pulling all the strings, our Congress are puppets of the Zionists. Exact same propaganda that Catholic Cynthia McKinney did. You can see it's the same pattern, gets repeated over and over again. All you gotta do is study the Dreyfus affair in France. I think that's the definitive Jesuit blueprint on how to just to gaslight the public into thinking that the Jews are a bigger threat.
Good Orthodox patriot Russians need to wake up. People like Ray McGovern on Russia Today, that clown on YouTube, that brother Nathaniel, the American Jew who is now an Orthodox priest who is just a vicious anti-Semite. I guarantee you that piece of shit, that weirdo gets a check directly from the Catholic Intelligence Agency. Good Russian Orthodox patriots need to wake up. Whether it's the Ustashi or these clowns want to blame the Jews for the ills of the woes of Russia, you are being snowed.
Oh, absolutely. And just even they blame the Jews. It's just pathetic. Like to say the Jews control Hollywood is a pathetic argument. Literally fourth vow ordained Jesuit priest Daniel Lord drafted the official Hollywood production code. You know what I mean? Like the biggest directors in Hollywood history, have been predominantly Catholic. Like what Jewish organization compares to the Legion of Decency? You know what I mean? So it's not even like it's not even like it's a joke when you actually start looking into it. A Jesuit priest, E.B. Okino, is the founder of the Western Cowboy. Knight of Malta director John Ford made the cowboy movie a thing in the 20th century. Frank Capra, a Knight of Malta, was doing all the propaganda movies for the U.S. Army. During World War II, he did the Why We Fight series. And just go down the list of the all you gotta do for the viewers, go to the list of the Jesuit alumni schools on Wikipedia, alumni list, go to the arts and entertainment section. And it's all laid out right there where the Hollywood elite, are educated.
I don't think we have the time for me to go through my list. Let me tell you how many names. 237 names in my list of Catholics involved in Hollywood. And again, these are just incidental, come up by accident. We recently had some email traffic about homosexual Catholics who were used and abused during the 60s and the so-called beefcake craze that was foisted on by homosexual manager Henry Wilson, who almost certainly was getting homosexual favors from these poor kids, whether it was Sal Mineo, who was stabbed to death, a young actor that is one of my favorites to bring up, Nick Adams, also a Roman Catholic and sexually confused, married, but was a male prostitute at one point. George brought up Arthur Gillian, whose screen name was Tab Hunter, another hyper devout homosexual Catholic. Joy, do you want to go into any of that before I go down this list? Because I'll be another 15 minutes just going down this list.
Well, you mentioned Tab Hunter, and there's a number of prominent actors, mostly in the 1950s and 60s, who fit that mold. You have, besides Tab Hunter, I'm drawing a blank, but he wasn't an actor, but he was a writer, an Irish writer of the 19th century, Oscar Wilde. I know that's a bit off topic. He was baptized Church of Ireland, which is the Irish version of the Anglican Church, and he was arrested for homosexuality because that was so illegal in England in the late 19th century. Well, anyhow, so he was sentenced to prison, hard labor, and he wrote, I'm not sure how this happened, but he befriended a Jesuit, and he wrote to his order, and he was asked if they could petition the British government, because Ireland was still part of the United Kingdom at the time, to see if he can get an early release. And so he did. He actually got out early at the behest of the Jesuits. And Oscar Wilde, for those of you who don't know, was a poet and a playwright who lived from 1844 to 1900. He was best known for the play Importance of Being Earnest and Pictures of Dorian Gray.
It sounds like another C.S. Lewis, Church of Ireland, secret Roman Catholic.
Well, he was actually a secret Roman. Well, he wasn't secret. He actually, at the end of his life, did become Catholic. So the Jesuits were able to pull strings to get him out of prison early. And he did officially convert to the Catholic Church.
Yeah, and another example of there's no such thing as a classic. There's no such thing as a classic poet, a classic author, classic Hollywood. It's all controlled. You are given the classics.
Yes, so they basically determine what you're supposed to read in high school or college or whatever the case may be. You have certain canons of books that you're supposed to read in American literature in the U.S. The Lord of the Rings by Tolkien, for example, who was a devout Roman Catholic and was trained by the Jesuits. And you brought this up.
This is on Johnny's website. I think this is the article Philippe wrote, but Philippe shows a letter that J.R. Tolkien wrote to the Jesuit from Vatican II, Courtney Murray, S.J., and Tolkien says to the Jesuit, the Lord of the Rings is an entirely Catholic movie, a Catholic concept.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is, and that's one of the reasons why we see it again and again and again. If you want success in Hollywood, you blow up Catholic fantasy, whether it's Lord of the Rings or Sherlock Holmes. Sir Arthur Ignatius Conan Doyle. Nobody knows his middle name, but that's the reason why we see these done over and over and over again. It's these corruptocrats in Hollywood kissing the ring.
Well, so Harry Cohen, for instance, the Jew founded Columbia Pictures, had a Roman Catholic wife. That's in Sean Wilcox's book, Jesuit Hollywood.
Oh, did you read my latest article on Sammy Davis Jr.? Because Harry Cohen pops up there too.
Yeah, actually, I saw that. Yeah, and he was very close with Catholic Mussolini. He would, spend.
And he used his mafia connections to strong arm Sammy Davis Jr. out of dating his white actress, I think it was Kim Novak at the time, and forcing him to marry a black woman. I think it was Lorraine White. So Harry Cohen, the Jew, with the white Italian Roman Catholic muscle, forced the black Jew, Sammy Davis, strong-armed him literally into not dating the white actress Kim Novak and forced him into an unhappy marriage with a black woman. You believe that? Read my latest article.
Yeah, and actually, I found that all of Davis's girlfriends and wives seem to be Catholic, which was interesting. And just for people to realize, think about this, what Jewish figure in Hollywood exercised even a tenth of the power that Joseph Ignatius Breen yielded. A Jesuit-trained Joseph Ignatius Breen, who was the head of the Production Code Administration, which enforced the 1930 production code that was drafted by the Jesuit Daniel A. Lord. Joseph Ignatius Breen was a devout Catholic. He actually had a brother that was a Jesuit priest, for instance. And this guy was there's a book on him. I'll link it from Thomas Doherty called Hollywood Censor. That's what his biographical is called. This guy was literally the censor of Hollywood for over 20 years. I would love to see any Jewish figure in Hollywood that even yields even 5% of the power that this Joseph Ignatius Breen yielded.
Hey, listen, you can't blame Sammy if he likes to date and marry Catholic women, even though he converted to Judaism. His mother was Cuban Roman Catholic. So you can't blame him. Another famous Catholic, very famous, nobody even knows this, Sharon Tate, the girlfriend of pedophile Roman Polanski, who was, I guess, actually pregnant when she was murdered by the Manson family, which was actually more of an assassination than just a random psycho killing. And by the way, how many people did Charles Manson kill that time, that day, back in wherever what was that, 1960?
Yeah, he didn't kill anyone.
Nobody.
How
many people did Charles Manson kill? Nobody.
What was the name? Oh, the name's escaping me. You found someone that was close to Manson. It was a female figure who went to Jesuit Holy Cross, who was one of Manson's.
His top female. I can't remember her name. Mother or something or other they called her.
And Manson spent time at Boys Town, which you found, which is incredibly odd and suspicious.
Something bad was happening at Boys Town. He ran from Boys Town. He escaped from Boys Town. Something bad was happening. He was transferred as a troubled child. A Catholic priest transferred him from a secular judge. A Catholic priest went to a secular judge and had him transferred to Boys Town, where he ran from Boys Town because something bad was happening to him. I'll come up with the name in a second of the Catholic, murderous Catholic female that ran the Manson gang.
Yeah, actually, Johnny, I know the Jesuits. I'll pull up the prison guard. What was the Charlie Manson Taming the Beast was the book. This book was written by a Jesuit trained prison guard. Yeah, it's by Edward George is the Jesuit trained author. But this was right from the where was this? I thought it was right on like the bio of the book. It says that Edward George's like Jesuit training is what led him to believe that he could tame the beast. It was something along the lines like that.
Right.
It was right on the Amazon page. Let me see if I can find that here. But yeah, so like they were all over the the Charlie Manson story. And this Edward George book shows that.
Patricia Krenwinkel? George, is that the name you're coming up with? Patricia Krenwinkel?
Or was it Susan Atkins? Well, there's two.
I think it is Patricia Krenwinkel though, Johnny. That does ring a bell.
She was the Mama Manson. Deep Catholic roots, including Jesuit training, Jesuit college at Spring Hill in Mobile, Alabama.
Yeah, there you go. Jesuit. And actually, here's the review here. So this is from Kirkus Reviews from the Jesuit. I'll link this from the book Taming the Beast, written by Jesuit-trained Edward George, who was I think Manson's prison guard. But from Kirkus Review, it says the latest entry in the canon of a true madman, George, a retired corrections officer who met Manson in 1975 at San Quentin, says up front that his Jesuit training led him to believe that the beast could indeed be tamed. His years of knowing Manson, who he frequently describes as devilish or demonic, a wicked trolled him to believe otherwise. And as both of George's narrative and the parole board hearing transcript cited here make clear, Manson is as monstrously sick as ever.
So he has been victimized. He has been repeatedly victimized by the Catholic Church, and they continue to blow him up to be something worse. Now, he was not a good guy. All right. All they did was they framed those murders on him and used him. And another reason why Roman Polanski, a pedophile Jew, Roman Polanski, still remains free in devout Roman Catholic France, because it's all part of a Vatican game. Guys, I got to get going. I got stuff I got to do. It's kind of short today, but great job, everybody. George, I know you're frothing at the bit. You got more to add to this. I'm going to be listening in the background as I do the stuff I need to do in the background. Keep up the great work.
Okay. Can I just make one thing before you go, Johnny?
Yeah.
Okay. Krenwinkel, I just looked this up. In addition to, as you said, she went to Spring Hill College in Alabama. She was also a catechism teacher at her Catholic church. So she was not just a nominal Catholic. She was not just a pew warmer. She was involved with the actual organization of her church. So I know you mentioned this before, and you just said this now. People don't know how many different psychological operations that were perpetrated on the American people during the Manson family massacres. You're right. Charlie Manson didn't kill anybody. He was just simply the patsy. And it was partially to cover the death of Roman Polanski's wife, Tate. Sharon
and
Tate.
it could very easily, and Sharon Tate, devout Roman Catholic, who was living an immoral life with Polanski. And I wouldn't doubt if Polanski asked for some kind of an assassination. He did not want to be connected. He did not want to be held back by her and her unborn child. And Polanski himself, his mother, was Roman Catholic. So there's a winning combination for Hollywood right there. Sexual deviant, Jew father, Catholic mother. Boom. You are set up, and a pedophile. You are set for success. I wouldn't doubt for a second that it was a hit and an assassination that they hung on Manson.
Well, and of course, the year before, Polanski made A Rosemary's Baby, in which this young woman was supposed to give birth not to the Antichrist, but to Satan. But the film, if you've ever seen it before, I don't recommend, is very Jesuitical in and of itself. Even though you're supposed to have this Polish Jewish director, Polanski, who directed it. Now, um, also, during World War II, Roman Polanski spent, or after Poland fell to the Nazis in 1939, Polanski spent some time in France, where he lived with a Catholic family. It was not his own. So you could say that Roman Polanski was basically another Abe Foxman, who was actually born and raised Roman Catholic in Poland, but was raised Jewish as after he came to America.
Yeah, he had the connections, which include him living free in Roman Catholic France even through today. I cover a large portion of this in my third book, Eaters of Children. So, guys, great job today, and great job, Eric, for throwing us up at the last minute. We did it. Hope to do this again real soon.
Okay, well, take care, Johnny, and God bless. And I had to be going also, Eric. I probably should have left 15 minutes ago. So I'll keep in touch, Johnny, and I'll keep in touch, Eric.
Yeah, I'll keep in touch. Well, just really quickly, I'll sign off here when you take off too, just to tie it in with great information on Roman Polanski's background, but just another type of devilish movie, like the same type of theme movie that came out was The Exorcist in 1973. And if people don't know, I have a video on my channel where they talk about this, like the director and some of the people involved in the film. But The Exorcist was actually filmed at Jesuit Georgetown University, the entire 1973 film. And William Peter Blatty, who wrote the Exorcist book that the movie was based on, was a devout Roman Catholic, double Jesuit trained at Brooklyn Prep and Georgetown. William Peter Blatty said he never felt so much at home as Georgetown than as he did. He said he had the time of his life at Georgetown, for instance. This is on his Wikipedia page. William Peter Blatty worked in the CIA in the psychological warfare department as well. But very interestingly, Jesuit-trained William Peter Blatty credits this Jesuit Thomas V. Birmingham, S.J., who interestingly was Joe Paterno's Jesuit, while Joe Paterno, the football coach, was attending Brooklyn Prep, which is a Jesuit prep school, which is no longer open. But William Peter Blatty, at the end of the Exorcist book, actually credits the idea of the book to the Jesuit Thomas V. Birmingham. And I'll leave that in the description. But that's a great example of Jesuit. It's hard to find a better example of Jesuitical theater, like Thomas Blatty, really Jesuit-trained psychological warfare expert. And I'm going to get the name of the Jesuit here. I'll link the video just before you, just so the people can see it here. But literally, they filmed this entire movie at Jesuit Georgetown, and there were multiple Jesuit priests that worked in the filming of this movie.
Well, they served as technical advisors, and of course, they're probably. I love to elaborate on that, but as I said, I probably should have left at about 5 o'clock. I'll keep in touch, Eric, and I look forward to doing this again soon.
Yeah, me too, George. I'll keep in touch. Yeah, all the best. And just I found the wiki page here. The guy's name is Thomas V. Birmingham, S.J., the Exorcist Jesuit. But we'll see you all in the next one, everyone. And take care, George.
Okay, bye now.
See ya.